Kayla abandoned the baby she had for a rich man, not knowing that one day she would regret it more than anything.
Seeds of regret.
Kayla was a housemaid in the home of a wealthy woman, Madame Benny. Every day, she worked long hours, taking care of the household and its demands. But before the mansion and its endless chores, there was another life. Kayla grew up in a small ghetto neighborhood in Lagos. Life was hard, and became even harder when, at the age of 16, she lost both her parents. From that moment, she had no one. No family, no support. Just herself and the will to survive. With no one to support her, she had to drop out of school. Every morning, she watched other children her age in their uniforms, heading off to class, while she stood outside her small home watching dreams she could no longer chase. But life had other plans. After months of struggling to survive, Kayla finally found work, as a housemaid in the mansion of a wealthy woman, Madame Benny. It wasn't the life she dreamed of, but at least, it was a way to live. One morning, Madame Benny called for her. The house had to be spotless. Her son, Andrew, was finally returning home after years abroad. For Kayla, it was just another task, though she didn't know how much that day would change her life. Madame Benny had her own past too. Her husband, Mr. Williams, built an empire from the ground up, and with his wife by his side, their business flourished. Together, they raised their son, Andrew, the pride of their home and heir to everything they had worked for. Andrew's father worked hard. Their success grew, and the family name became one of prestige. But even in his prime, he thought ahead. He prepared his will, and in it, he entrusted everything to his wife, to be passed down to their son when the time was right. After her husband passed away, Madame Benny took up the mantle. She worked tirelessly to protect everything he built, every contract, every company, every reputation, all for one reason: to keep the legacy alive for their son, Andrew, until he was ready to take his place. Years had passed, and the legacy stood strong. Now, Andrew was finally home, the son Madame Benny had worked so hard for. As he stepped out of the car, dragging his suitcase toward the mansion, Kayla hurried out to welcome him. She didn't know him before this moment, but from that day on, their lives would slowly begin to intertwine. Right from the moment he arrived, Andrew noticed Kayla. Inside the mansion, he spoke kindly to her. She was shy, nervous even. After all, he was her boss as well. But Andrew saw something different in her, a quiet grace, a sincerity that stood out in a world filled with pretense. And he admired her for it. When Madame Benny was away, Andrew took Kayla out for a meal. Nothing fancy, just a quiet place where they could talk. For the first time since she started working in the Williams mansion, Kayla didn't feel like a servant. Andrew listened to her, laughed with her, and treated her as an equal. And in that moment, something real began to grow between them. One evening, during dinner, Madame Benny looked at her son with a smile and asked, "So, Andrew, when will you introduce your girlfriend to me, the woman you plan to build a future with?" Kayla stood quietly by, serving the table, her heart pounding. With a calm voice, Andrew replied, "I already have someone in mind, and soon you'll meet her." Weeks later, when Madame Benny left the city for a business trip, Andrew saw his chance. He wanted Kayla to fit perfectly into his world, or perhaps into his mother's. He took her to a high-end boutique, intending to shop for her. Kayla was overwhelmed, unsure how to feel, but one thing was becoming clear: Andrew's world was slowly becoming hers. In the quiet of the boutique, Kayla tried on dresses she never dreamed she'd touch. Each one shimmered under the lights, making her look like she was from a different world. Andrew watched from the background, smiling softly, proud, amused, and quietly falling in love. Kayla stood before the mirror, hardly recognizing the reflection that stared back. The girl in the glass looked confident, beautiful, nothing like the housemaid she had become. And for the first time, Kayla felt something new. She felt seen. She felt valuable. That evening, Andrew took Kayla to an upscale restaurant, the kind she had only seen from afar. Dressed in elegance, she felt like she was living someone else's life. Andrew guided her gently, teaching her the manners and grace of his world. And when the night reached its quiet peak, he looked into her eyes and asked softly, "Kayla, will you be my girl?" For a moment, she could barely breathe. Her heart raced, her hands trembled, and then, with a shy smile and tears she couldn't hold back, she whispered, "Yes." Later that day, Andrew and Kayla sat together in his room, flipping through the family photo album. They laughed, shared stories, and for a while, the world outside didn't matter. In that quiet space, they found something rare: comfort, joy, and love, pure and simple. Morning light crept through the curtains. Kayla slept peacefully, wrapped in the quiet of the room, while Andrew, already up and buttoning his shirt, watched her for a moment. The passion of the night lingered in the air, a silent testament to their bond, a connection deeper than words could capture. That evening, after Madame Benny returned, Andrew urged Kayla to dress in one of the elegant outfits he had chosen for her. He buttoned his suit with care, while Kayla stood behind him, heart pounding, fear and anticipation written across her face. Tonight, he planned to declare his feelings, and finally introduce her to his mother. When Andrew finally introduced Kayla to his mother, Madame Benny's reaction was explosive. "Kayla, a servant? You're dating our maid?" she shouted, disbelief and anger in every word. She gestured sharply at Kayla while chastising her son. Kayla stood silently, head bowed, caught between fear and shame, as the storm she never saw coming hit full force. Kayla left the scene as an argument ensued. Andrew pleaded, trying to make his mother understand, but Madame Benny's anger was unwavering. Their voices rose, sharp and tense, echoing through the house. Madame Benny's voice rose, calm, yet laced with fury. "Andrew, if this is the kind of decision you make about your future life partner, then it's clear you're not ready to take on your father's empire. Tell me, is this how you plan to embarrass me and this family? By getting involved with a servant?" Her words stung, echoing through the room. Andrew stood silent, his mother's disappointment heavier than anger itself. Kayla sat quietly on the stairs, tears streaming down her face. She had heard every word. The laughter, the dresses, the tender moments with Andrew, they had all felt like a dream, her very own fairy tale. But now, reality hit hard. She could wear fine clothes, speak softly, even dine in the fanciest restaurants, yet she was still just a servant. No matter how much Andrew tried to make her different, the truth remained: they were worlds apart. Later that week, Andrew tried once again to reason with his mother. He caught her by the poolside, hoping the calm air might soften her heart. But Madame Benny remained firm. Her answer hadn't changed. "This is the last I want to hear of this, Andrew," she warned. "You will find a suitable woman, someone who fits this family's name, or you will remain single. Do I make myself clear?" Madame Benny confronted Andrew once more, her tone stern but controlled. She told him to shape up, to focus on his future and the responsibilities waiting for him. To her, love was one thing, but class, legacy, and the family name came first. The next morning, Andrew walked into his mother's study, hoping to change her stance. But Madame Benny didn't even let him speak. Her voice was cold, her tone final. "Andrew, this is your last warning," she said. "If you don't end whatever foolishness you have with that girl, that servant, I will entrust everything your father built, everything I've held for you, to charity." Andrew froze. The air grew heavier. He knew then, his mother wasn't bluffing. As his mother's words echoed in his head, Andrew remembered. He was just a little boy when his father passed away, but he recollected the lawyer reading the will to them. His father had left everything to his mother, entrusting her to decide when he would be ready to take it all. Back then, it sounded like love, like protection, but now, it felt like chains. For the first time, he felt truly defeated. The empire his father built, the love he'd found, both now felt impossibly out of reach. And in that quiet room, surrounded by everything that symbolized power, Andrew had never felt smaller. One morning, Kayla felt uneasy as she worked. Her stomach turned, her body heavy with fatigue. She tried to ignore it at first, tried to convince herself it was nothing, but deep down, she knew something was different. Later that day, Kayla sat quietly in her small room, trying to make sense of what she felt. She wasn't the type to fall ill easily, but this was different. The nausea, the weakness, it didn't feel ordinary. And as the thought crossed her mind, fear slowly crept in. The following day, Kayla slipped out quietly to a nearby store to buy a pregnancy test kit. She had missed 2 periods already, and though she tried to deny it, a small voice inside her whispered what it could mean. In the small bathroom, Kayla's trembling hands held the test strip. 2 bold lines stared back at her, clear, undeniable. She was pregnant, with Andrew's child. Later, in Andrew's bedroom, Kayla told him the news, her voice trembling as she spoke. "Andrew, I'm pregnant," she said. Andrew paused, then a small, reassuring smile formed on his lips. "It's okay, Kayla," he said gently. Hope flickered in his mind. With this news, perhaps his mother would have to relent. Andrew approached his mother and told her the news, but the moment she heard it, her eyes flared with anger. In her mind, Kayla was no longer just a servant. She was a social climber, scheming to trap her son. But she won't allow it. Madame Benny found Kayla in the house, her expression hard and unforgiving. "You're done here," she declared. "Pack your things and leave. Now." Kayla fell to her knees, tears streaming down her face as she pleaded, but Madame Benny's eyes never wavered. She would not listen. Her mind was made up. Kayla had to go. On Madame Benny's orders, the security man escorted Kayla out of the mansion. Her pleadings went unheard as she was forced through the door, the life she had known, ripped away in an instant. Andrew followed quickly, catching up to Kayla just outside the gates. He took her hands gently, looking into her eyes with determination. "Kayla, I won't let this keep us apart. I promise, I'll come for you. You won't be away from me for long. I love you." Kayla's heart trembled at his words, a small flicker of hope cutting through the fear and heartbreak. Andrew pulled Kayla into a firm protective embrace. She rested against him, feeling the warmth and strength in his arms. For the first time since being cast out, Kayla felt truly safe. She believed him. He would come for her, no matter what. Back inside the mansion, Andrew confronted his mother, his voice filled with frustration and pleading. "If you won't accept my love for her, at least consider what she carries. My child," he demanded. But Madame Benny's eyes were sharp, her tone icy. "Andrew, don't forget my warning. Continue down this path, and everything that should be yours will be lost," she threatened. In her mind, she believed only one thing. Kayla was scheming, trying to cling to the house. The idea that she was truly carrying Andrew's child never crossed her mind. Kayla stepped quietly into the small house she used to live in, her bag dragging behind her. The walls, the rooms, everything felt familiar yet strange, a reminder of the life she had left behind. Alone again, she took a deep breath, bracing herself for the days ahead. Kayla sat alone in the room, her thoughts heavy and her heart aching. Sadness and confusion swirled around her, yet a small flicker of hope remained. She clung to the belief that Andrew would come for her, that she wouldn't have to face this alone. Back in the mansion, Madame Benny placed a set of papers carefully on the living room table in front of Andrew. "Everything is finalized," she said firmly as she set the papers down. "You'll be leaving for the UK to continue your studies. It's time you clear your head and think carefully about your future." Seeing Andrew's reluctance, Madame Benny sat with him the next day, the travel documents and papers spread before them. "You need to leave as soon as possible," she urged, her tone leaving no room for argument. "Classes are about to start, and this is what's best for you." Andrew nodded, torn between his obligation and his love for Kayla. In his room, Andrew stared at his passport and the stack of papers on the desk. This wasn't what he wanted. Not now, not when his heart and thoughts were with Kayla. But there was no convincing his mother. He would have to go. Still, one thing remained unshaken, his love for Kayla. That would follow him wherever he went. Andrew methodically packed his belongings into his bag, checking and rechecking to ensure he had everything. With his suitcase in hand, he made his way out of the house, heading toward the airport. Soon, he was at the terminal, passport and documents ready, walking toward the gate as he prepared to board his flight to the UK. The plane lifted into the sky, leaving the city below. There was no turning back now. Andrew's journey abroad had begun, a new chapter unfolding before him, while his heart remained tethered to Kayla. Back in the ghetto, Kayla had started a small business, roasting corn by the roadside. Every day, she worked tirelessly, trying to make enough to eat and survive, her thoughts never straying far from Andrew. 2 months had passed, and Andrew didn't come for her like he promised, so Kayla's hope began to slip away. She sat in front of her small ghetto home, lost in thought, the weight of reality pressing down on her. If she brought this child into the world, how would she manage? How would she survive when even feeding herself was a struggle? Kayla made her decision. When she had saved up enough money, she went to the hospital, seeking an abortion. But the results of the tests carried out on her were grim. The doctor warned her that attempting it now could be fatal, and even if she survived, it might leave her unable to have children in the future. Fear gripped her, but so did uncertainty. She had no choice, yet the path forward seemed impossibly difficult. Kayla returned to the roadside, resuming her corn roasting trade. Each day was a battle to survive, her hands busy but her mind heavy with the weight of the decision she now faced. Life went on, but the uncertainty of the future lingered over her like a shadow. Now heavily pregnant, Kayla had switched from roasting to hawking boiled corn. The smoke from roasting had become too harsh on her body. Every step was a reminder of how close she was to giving birth, yet she pushed on, determined to make it through, no matter the hardship. Another day, as Kayla walked along the roadside hawking corn, a sharp pain gripped her mid-step. She instinctively supported her swollen belly with one hand, each movement sending waves of discomfort through her body. By the time Kayla reached the main road, the pain was unbearable. She clutched her belly with both hands, her face twisted in agony. Passers-by noticed her distress and rushed to help. Soon, she was surrounded by concerned strangers, her bowl of corn knocked to the ground, its contents scattered across the road, as they tried to support her through the torment. That night, Kayla lay asleep in the hospital bed, her body finally resting after the ordeal. Beside her, in a small baby cot, her newborn daughter slept peacefully, unaware of the struggles that had brought her into the world. And for the first time in months, Kayla felt a fragile sense of relief, but the future still held uncertainty. When she woke up, Kayla held her newborn daughter close. Happiness and sorrow battled within her, a tidal wave of emotions she could barely contain. She was overwhelmed, lost, and uncertain, yet for a brief moment, the warmth of the child in her arms brought a flicker of solace. Back home after being discharged, Kayla faced the harsh reality of life alone. Almost penniless, she could barely survive. It had been 8 long months, and now she finally realized Andrew is not coming for her. Keeping the child would mean suffering beyond what she could bear. 7 days after giving birth, when her strength had somewhat returned, Kayla quietly carried her baby into the night, making her way to a local orphanage she had heard about. Her heart ached, but she had no choice. This was the only way she could help her baby. Kayla gently placed her newborn daughter in the basket left outside the orphanage for donations from passers-by. Tears welled in her eyes as she stepped back, knowing she could not take her home. Her heart ached with every beat, but all she could do was hope that the baby would find people who would love and care for her, and that she would be safe in their hands. Once her strength returned, Kayla resumed her daily routine, hawking boiled corn along the streets. Life pressed on relentlessly, and she kept moving forward, driven by the need to survive despite the weight in her heart. Meanwhile, months later, Andrew's plane touched down in Nigeria, marking the end of his year abroad. And though he had spent more than a year away, thoughts of Kayla never left him. Arriving back home, Andrew stepped out of the car, walking behind the maids as they dragged his travel bags ahead of him, carrying the weight of his return. Every step brought him closer to the mansion and the life waiting inside, though not much had changed in his absence. Inside the mansion, Madame Benny embraced Andrew warmly, her eyes shining with joy. She was delighted not only by his safe return, but also by the academic success he had achieved while away. She was proud of the man he had become. After Andrew's arrival, Madame Benny hosted a gathering at the mansion, a party oddly filled with ladies from high society. The event buzzed with chatter and laughter, but none of it caught Andrew's attention. At another social event, Madame Benny took the lead, introducing Andrew to several young ladies from her circle, but despite the introductions and their polished smiles, Andrew remained distant, uninterested, and clearly unimpressed. At yet another dinner gathering, arranged by Madame Benny to set Andrew up with a young lady, he remained polite but distant. Though he exchanged words and smiles out of courtesy, his heart wasn't in it. His thoughts kept returning to Kayla, the one he truly cared for. Back at the mansion, after receiving feedback from the girl, Madame Benny felt bewildered. What had happened to her son? Nowadays, Andrew barely engaged with anyone, and even his usual warmth toward her had faded. She couldn't help but wonder, what is it about this Kayla girl? Meanwhile, in Andrew's bedroom, he sat staring at photos of Kayla on his phone, the memories pulling at him. He longed to see her, but he had no idea where she lived. Now he regretted many oversights. He had never asked for her contact nor her address, because he hadn't anticipated that his mother would send her away. And now, even after he had promised to come for her, he had no way to trace her. Only Madame Benny knew where she was, and she had no intention of telling him. The next day, Andrew approached his mother, imploring her to give him Kayla's address. But she flared up instantly, her temper sharp. Andrew argued, his frustration building as he pressed for answers. When tension peaked, Madame Benny laid it bare. "Choose, Andrew, her or your father's empire. You cannot have both." Andrew stormed out of the house, his mind a whirlwind of anger and frustration. He teetered on the edge of a decision. He didn't want to lose his father's legacy, yet he couldn't bear to lose Kayla either. He wanted her back desperately. The conflict tore through his mind, leaving him in turmoil. The tension had taken its toll on Madame Benny. She struggled to breathe, clutching at her chest, discomfort mounting with every second. Suddenly, she collapsed to the ground, the world spinning around her. Darkness edged in, and as she sank into unconsciousness, the last thing she saw was Andrew entering the house. In that fleeting moment, a thought crossed her fading mind. He would let her die, just to claim his father's empire and pursue his heart's desire without any obstacle. In the hospital, Madame Benny lay on the bed, unconscious but stable. Andrew had rushed her there, the weight of the night's events heavy on him. Though she slept, the fear and tension of the ordeal still lingered in the room, leaving Andrew to wait, worried and restless by her side. Madame Benny awoke in the hospital, her eyes meeting Andrew's with worry and confusion. "I thought you'd let me die," she whispered, guilt heavy in her voice. Andrew shook his head gently. "Never. I could never let that happen. I love you, no matter what." The words hit her hard, making her recall the heated arguments of the past. The moment he introduced Kayla, her anger, her harshness, even sending Kayla away. Regret filled her heart. "I'm sorry, son," she said softly, tears welling in her eyes. "I should have supported you. I should have respected your choice." When Andrew spoke of Kayla once more, Benny nodded this time. "If Kayla is the one you want, I'll accept her. I will bless your relationship," she said, and then promised that once discharged, she would take Andrew to Kayla's home, personally apologize, and bring her back. It was obvious now, the two of them belonged together. The day finally came. Andrew stood by the glass window of his room, gazing out with a mix of anticipation and nervous excitement. Months had passed since Kayla gave birth, and now, finally, he would see her and his child. Every thought of that moment made his heart race. Today, everything would change. Later, they set off on their journey, the car bumping along the uneven dirt streets of the ghetto, carrying Andrew and Madame Benny closer to Kayla's home. Every turn brought Andrew nearer. At last, his long wait to see her and his child would end. When they arrived at Kayla's home, Andrew knocked at the worn wooden door, his heart beating faster with every second. Behind him, Madame Benny stood quietly, a mix of concern and hope in her eyes. The car waited patiently on the dusty street, but all that mattered now was the moment that would finally bring them face to face with Kayla and the baby. In the backyard of her small home, Kayla bent over a basin, washing clothes, when she heard a knock at the front door. She paused, unsure who could be visiting her. Kayla walked into the house, opened the door, and peeped out to see who the visitor was. But the sight she met shocked her. After more than a year, Andrew had come. For a moment, Kayla forgot everything else. She welcomed them into the house, her heart racing, the shock slowly giving way to a hesitant warmth as Andrew and Madame Benny stepped inside. Andrew stepped forward and enclosed her in an affectionate embrace, and the two held on to each other for a while, happy to finally be reunited after such a long time apart. Seated together in the modest living room, Madame Benny looked at Kayla with a mix of remorse and warmth. She apologized for everything she had done, admitting how her pride and ignorance had blinded her, keeping her from seeing that the love between Kayla and Andrew was genuine and enduring. Andrew leaned forward, his eyes searching hers, a mix of excitement and urgency in his voice. "Kayla, where is my baby? Our baby?" he asked, barely able to contain the anticipation he had carried for so long. Kayla's heart sank at the question. She had abandoned the baby several months ago, having lost hope that Andrew would ever come for her, and because she couldn't afford to keep the child. But if she told him the truth, he would be outraged, and Madame Benny would surely not be kind. The fragile goodwill she had earned now would shatter. Kayla looked down at their clasped hands, unable to meet Andrew's eyes. I had a miscarriage," she said softly, the lie tasting bitter on her tongue as guilt and fear weighed heavily on her. Andrew was devastated, and so was Madam Benny, who couldn't help but wonder if perhaps Kayla had never been pregnant at all. But if she was the one Andrew chose, she would stand by her, honoring her son's choice. At their request, Kayla packed her belongings into a bag, preparing to return with them to the mansion. When they arrived back at the mansion, Kayla looked around in awe. It felt unreal to be here again, this time not as a maid, but a welcomed guest. She sighed softly, her heart swelling with a mix of relief, disbelief, and cautious hope. In her new bedroom, Kayla sat on the bed, weighed down by regret. She hadn't miscarried, she had given birth and abandoned her baby. Now, she had also lied to Andrew and Madam Benny to protect herself. Her emotions threatened to overwhelm her, but she held them in, knowing she must not reveal the truth. Not now. After she had settled in, a tutor was hired to help Kayla further her studies, preparing her for her high school examinations and eventual university admission. Andrew was determined to support her every step of the way, giving her the opportunities she'd never had before. When the day came, Kayla sat in the hall among many others, pen in hand, giving her all to the examinations. Every hour of study, every tear shed, every hope she had clung to over the years, she had to make it all worth it, and she did. After her examinations ended, Andrew took Kayla on a surprise date to the beach. There, with the waves as their witness, he asked, "Kayla, will you marry me?" Overcome with joy, she said yes immediately. She loved him deeply and couldn't wait to spend the rest of her life with him. That day, they got engaged. When the results finally came in, Kayla stood nervously, heart pounding, as Andrew checked them. A smile spread across his face. She had passed all her subjects with excellent grades. Now, they could move on to the next step, her college education. But before her college journey began, Andrew and Kayla got married in an elaborate ceremony, surrounded by family, friends, and well-wishers. At last, their love was celebrated, and they began their life together as husband and wife. That very day, Andrew and Kayla proceeded to the airport, leaving the country for their honeymoon. They planned to return once Kayla had completed her first degree. 4 years later, the couple returned, having changed in many ways. Kayla had completed her degree, and now they were ready to settle back into their lives at home. When they arrived at the mansion, Madam Benny greeted them with open arms, embracing both warmly. She was truly overjoyed to have them back home. Later, Madam Benny called Andrew and handed over every document, every asset, and every part of the empire she had maintained and grown, placing them all firmly in Andrew's hands, the rightful heir. With her mission fulfilled, she stepped back, ready to retire. In the company, Andrew now sat at the head of the boardroom table, presiding over meetings with a commanding presence. Every word, every decision reflected his determination and vision. This was his time to expand the empire, to pour his passion, heart, and soul into the business his family had built. At home, Kayla sat quietly, her thoughts heavy with the memory of her baby. The truth pressed on her heart, a secret she had carried for far too long. She feared Andrew's reaction. He might think she didn't love him, that she had abandoned the fruit of their love. And the lie she had told him when he returned only added to her guilt. Yet an idea began to take shape in her mind. If she could find the orphanage, locate the baby, perhaps telling the truth wouldn't feel so impossible. Maybe, with a child with them, Andrew's anger and sadness would be softened, and forgiveness might still be within reach. Kayla sat quietly in the car, the Lagos traffic crawling around her. Every turn brought her closer to the place she had buried her past, the orphanage where she had abandoned her newborn daughter. Her little girl must be 4 now, and the weight of guilt and fear pressed down on her, mingled with a fragile hope that maybe she could still make things right. When Kayla arrived at the place she believed she had left her baby, the sight that met her eyes was shocking. The orphanage was gone, rubble and debris lay where hope and life once stood. She stood frozen, the whole area had been demolished.
The story has just begun. Watch Seeds of Regret Part 2 here on this channel at Ivywood TV. Please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to this channel. Thank you for watching.